Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of To My Younger Self,
the #1 support network for students and graduates.
Made by young people for young people.
It's Alicia here.
And it's your girl Praise. And today
we have an amazing episode lined up as we chat with the brilliant minds behind Choppity, the game-changing video editing tool that's making content creation smoother, faster and smarter. And you might recognise them from the latest season of Dragon's Den.
Woo!
It's Zara and Aaron.
I said this before, but we're really happy to have you both on.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for coming on.
So before we get into like the main chunk of the episode, we have this segment that we always do with all our guests, and it's basically called the Vibe of the Week. And it's where you give a recommendation to our listeners, our watchers, a recommendation for anything. And my brothers started mocking me now because I always say the same thing. I say it could be a movie, a film, a book, but it actually could be anything that you want to recommend. And if you haven't got it yet, Alicia can go first.
Yeah, that would be great if you could go first.
So mine is the new Bridget Jones movie. Don't laugh at me. I went to watch it in the cinema on Valentine's Day with my friend Sapna, and it was actually really good. It actually made me quite emotional. I don't want to give spoilers. I can't think of a way to not give spoilers, but it's just like it's quite sad, but I'd recommend it. It's really good.
Okay, nice.
Have you guys seen the other Bridget Jones?
No, I think I've seen one.
Oh, you've seen one?
Okay, I've seen one, and you know I did really like it.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, but it was a good few years ago.
Good.
I'll give it a watch.
You won't.
Maybe.
She won't.
I will, if I'm really bored.
Is there justification? You have to watch the first ones.
Yeah, I think. I went with Sapna. She didn't watch the other ones, so she understood it. But I feel like he didn't connect as much because the main thing was that it was the exact same actors from the first one, which was obviously made, I don't know, a very long time ago now, and you'd seen them all grown up. So like her parents were really old and stuff like that. So it was just really cute and like nostalgic.
No, I'll watch it. I'll watch it now after that description.
Thanks.
In terms of my vibe of the week, off the top of my head, I went to Lapland recently.
Okay.
And I had a great time. So I would recommend Lapland as a holiday destination. And I did skiing when I was younger, but it was like a school trip. And I hadn't done it for many years since. So we went back and did skiing. And it was really fun. So I feel like overall that whole experience was really nice for me. So that would be my vibe of the week.
Nice.
Is it difficult skiing? Or
from the videos, how I looked, I made it look difficult.
I thought you were going to say from the videos on YouTube, it looked really easy.
No, it honestly did.
Backflip,
I thought we did a 45-minute lesson and she was like, and then we said, okay, can we go to the top now? And she was like, I think you should say it. Have you both been skiing before?
I have. Aaron has.
No, I
do
haven't.
think there's a learning curve with it, and there are some people who can just do it really naturally, and then there are some people who are just like, you know, they look like baby deer.
Yeah, yes, I'm that baby deer.
I spent a lot of time like longboarding and skateboarding, so I think I would want to go straight for snowboarding. It just feels like that would probably be more natural to me than skiing.
Whenever I see someone skateboarding or like roller skating, you know, through like Westfield, Stratford or something, I'm just like, I wish I was more cool. I need some cool hobby. It's just so
We
cool.
actually had a moment where we were, it was really, actually I think it was after the Dragon's Den episode aired. We literally came home and it was so late, we were waiting for the bus, and you know when at night they like clean the streets with water, with like pressure hoses, and it creates this sort of like misty air, and amongst the mist, do you remember this? There was this person that was just like rollerblading, and they had this like massive set of headphones on, and they were really tall, and it just looks so like
disco
80s,
made out of a movie,
straight out of a movie. Do you guys know your vibes of the week?
I think I do. I think mine is the board game Carcassonne.
Oh, I've not heard of that. What is it?
It's just a really good board game. It's a friend of ours who left it at our house, and we were supposed to play it with him, and we procrastinated, and then he procrastinated picking it up. So like the other night, Aaron and I were like, let's do something that's not screens, let's play a game, and we played that, and it was a lot of fun. It's like you like build like cities and roads and stuff using tiles, and they all have to like match up, and then you win points based on like the cities and stuff.
Is there a winner at the end of?
Yeah.
Who won when you
We played
it?
2 games, so it was Aaron then me.
Okay.
It
Zara
sounds
usually
fun.
wins. I won't lie. Like, actually,
not
so
first game.
have you guys seen on LinkedIn? There's the new puzzle games.
No.
They've added puzzle games.
Do you know like Wordle? You know how there's the new
Yeah.
right, so LinkedIn has those. And last night in bed, to
Is
be
that your
fair,
vibe of the week?
to my no, but to my I don't know, to back myself up, it was like 2 a.m. But we started. Actually, no, was it this morning? You know, I can't even remember. But anyway, we were playing them, and there was there's like 4 different games, and Zara completed them. I think in like 4 minutes.
Wow.
It took me 12 minutes to do the first one. Not exaggerating. It took me so long. So yeah, Zara usually does win the games, unfortunately. But I'm competitive, so yeah.
I am as well. I'm very
Out
competitive.
of interest, do you do Sudoku?
I love.
I was gonna say you sound like
Yeah.
someone who would
I
then.
obsessively play Sudoku.
I started it recently, and I'm just
Is it
like,
good?
this is fun.
Can you
Yeah.
guys play chess as well? I mean,
See,
Yeah.
I really like chess.
Yeah.
I get
But
stressed out because of the clocks. So I can play like on a real board with a real
Yeah.
person, and if it's like really chill. But if it's with a clock, I'm just like, I
Have
can't
you
think anymore.
Have you seen Queen's Gambit on Netflix?
well, no, unfortunately, I started watching it, and
Yeah.
then Zara was like, "Oh, don't watch it. We'll watch it together." And then we
And
never
then we
watched
never.
it. Never watched
so
it.
good. It's really
good.
good. You should finish it. It's really good.
Yeah.
And what's your vibe for the week, Aaron?
I'm gonna say my vibe of the week is probably like learning. I think like just with like some of the stuff we've been doing, I've had to like go back like I don't know a few years in terms of like this my day-to-day work and what I do. So I'm having to learn how to learn again because I haven't really done that for a while.
Yeah.
And like for example, either today or tomorrow, one of my plans is to have a bath and read some papers. You know, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with academic papers because I was always super intimidated by papers before I went to uni, and then I went to uni and then I like learned that I could actually read them. And so now I quite enjoy the challenge of like opening up a paper, having no clue what any of the terminology is, and then by the end of it being able to like understand the space. So yeah,
That's a really
You
good
make
one.
learning sound really fun from that description.
It's really fun.
It is.
yeah.
It is. But it's like, I think we said this before in one of our previous episodes, when you're in it, it doesn't seem as enjoyable. But sometimes, like, when I reflect back, I'm like, oh, I really love this.
You know what? It's when you have to do it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah,
When you get to learn the bits that you want to learn, when you get to sort of direct your own discovery, I think that makes a massive difference. But when it's prescribed, it's not fun.
More difficult.
100%.
I thought it was interesting that you say that as well, because I started my new job recently and I was literally saying to Praise before we started filming that it's like I'm in my learning stage and I'm really excited. And it's funny that you say that you were like intimidated by academic papers, because I feel like I don't like actually realise that that's a flip side to it, because I'm more intimidated by quantitative stuff. So my first project that I'm on is like very like data analysis heavy, so I'm doing like my Excel training at the moment.
Right.
And like that's a bit intimidating, but it's exciting when you get it right. So I think it goes to show that you can be intimidated by different things, whether it's quant or qual. But I think like just overcoming that and learning and knowing that you can get it in the end.
Yeah.
So amazing vibes of the week. Thank you guys for giving us those. I'll try them out. Will you?
Also, can I just add for context before we get into the episode more? So Zara and Aaron were on Dragon's Den, which we mentioned already. But I watched it first, and then me and Praise had a sleepover and watched it together. And we knew after that we needed to get them on. And the reason why is just, you guys need to go and watch the full episode. Like, we'll link it down below. But the reason why was just like the way you guys presented yourself. I feel like you were so intelligent, and the fact that you're young as well. I just loved that too. So it's really exciting to have you on. And yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That wasn't like by accident though. We had our mentors. We basically did a practice pitch to our mentors, and we asked them to like grill us. And it was really bad at the time that we practiced with them, and we were also a lot more, I don't know, like scattered and a little bit more like I guess chaotic about it. It felt a little bit flaily almost. And they asked us really difficult questions, and they also said, you know, you guys are going to seem like idiots if you can't
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Did they say that?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I have like rose tinted sunglasses.
Well,
of
I
history.
always think it's because I've been watching Dragon's Den for years now, and it just always like frustrates me when you get someone on that it's like, you know, they're going to ask you the numbers. So
Yeah,
just,
oh,
like,
yeah,
try
yeah.
and remember the
And you know
numbers.
the annoying thing, they asked us
Yeah.
the numbers
We
because
knew
the
Well,
pitch was
I-
actually like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then they cut it down.
It's longer than what we watch. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you do
long.
get the numbers right, they just don't include it. But if you get if you get them wrong, then they'll include it. You know.
Depends. Sometimes they
Yeah.
do include it,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you get them right,
Yeah.
just because I think it can give context for how good or bad
Yeah.
the business is
Yeah.
doing. But I think,
Yeah, but I was gonna say, I think it's a like the Dragon's Den experience. It requires a little bit of game theory as well,
Yeah.
because we had to like we strategized quite hard beforehand as to how we wanted to go and how we wanted to appear,
Yeah.
and because otherwise, like, you know, you see it all the time, like somebody says something that the dragons aren't happy with, and then it just becomes like so negative, like
Yeah.
so quickly, and then from that point you can't get back.
It's done.
And you've got no opportunity to argue. So like at the start we're like, okay, how can we make sure that we have a positive experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
watched so many episodes.
So many episodes, yeah. I would do the same as well
Yeah.
if I was going on it. I guess might as well talk about the Dragon's Den experience.
Yeah.
So when did you guys know that you wanted to go on the show, and what was that process?
Wait, can I just interject quickly?
Yeah, of course.
Before that, for our listeners or viewers who don't know what Choppity is, would either of you be able to provide like a brief overview?
Sure. Choppity is an automated video editor for sales, marketing, and social media videos. And currently it serves a couple of use cases, but the primary one is short form video editing. So that's either turning long videos like a podcast into social media clips, or editing short videos for social media as well.
Also, I remember, that's another thing, when I saw Choppity as well, I remember just thinking how useful it was, especially because we're in the podcasting space, because obviously I said to you guys off camera, but it takes hours to actually, hours to change like a long form video into short form clips. And I think it's like, because you have to watch back and then think about the standout moments as well, and then cut those, whereas obviously Choppity does that for you, which is great.
And then caption it.
Yeah,
Change the words.
captions,
Yeah.
changing the cameras. There's a lot. You guys will see a 10-second video on Instagram, but there's hours that goes behind it. Like, it is quite long. So I always thought, as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, this is gold dust. Like, this is a great tool. Why has no one made this before? But I also think it's really cool as well how you're able to, I think because of your coding background, you have an idea and then you're able to actually make it a reality. Because I feel like sometimes, and then maybe this is why it would be good to get some coding experience, is that I actually do have ideas. Like, I suggested one to you the other day, but it's like we'll have them and we'll just leave it because we won't actually turn it into a reality. So what was that process like for you guys?
It's interesting because in, I think, 2020 or 2021, we had an idea that we were building on, and we spent a year and a half building on it, and then by the time we launched it, we had no way of monetizing it. We built something that no one really wanted. I think that a lot of the time people, and we used to as well, place a lot of importance or value on ideas, but ideas don't really mean very much if they're not
So true.
solving problems. And yeah, I think my frame of mind has really changed when it comes to actually providing value. Like, yes, building is difficult, and yes, turning an idea into reality is difficult, but all the rest of the stuff is sometimes even more difficult.
Yeah.
It's sometimes even more difficult to identify an actual problem that people are willing to pay to solve.
Yeah.
And a lot of people gloss over that and will start sort of with ideas straight away.
It's actually a problem that like so people like me who are like technical and can code stuff, it's a problem that they have, which is that because we know how to code, the easy thing for us to do is to build a product. The really hard thing is to talk to people, find out their problems, build a really bad version of the software, because nobody likes building bad software, but that's what you have to do. You have to build a bad version, give it to them, get feedback and iterate. And so it's like it's just really easy to choose the easy path as opposed to doing what you're actually meant to do.
Yeah.
And so it can kind of be like counterproductive actually if you have like a lot of experience and you're not used to the proper way to do things.
Yeah. That's a good point. How did you guys realise that gap in the market for a tool like Choppity? Because I think for us it's obvious, like being in the content creation space, but how did you guys like notice that that was a gap that needed to be filled and a problem that needed to be solved?
Yeah, so do you want to, you started or?
Yeah, sure. It was a bit of... so actually my dad says this thing that I really like, which is the prepared mind. And he talks about how... Have you either of you ever done photography?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you experienced this, but when I did like photography and videography, I would start to see spaces differently.
100%.
You know, because you'd be like, instead of just like walking around, I'd be like, oh, that would be really cool. And, you know, I never got good at photography, but that experience taught me enough to be like, okay, well, if your mind is prepared in a certain way, then you'll experience things differently.
That's true.
And I think it's one of those things where if your history has a unique combination of experiences, then you can see certain things. So for me, it was because I had done video editing. Like I really like video editing. And you know, we were saying like the whole YouTube thing. I've got like probably 6 YouTube channels that I've thought of, filmed the first, you know, video for and never posted. But yeah, I really like doing that. And then also with my like experience with development and making like websites and stuff like that, it just kind of seemed like an obvious space. And also at the same time was when AI was starting to become a thing. So it was like that very specific point in time where there was a problem that I could see with video editing. Short form content was booming, and the technology existed to make solving the problem possible. And then just kind of like having, you know, these things like ruminating, you know, in our minds made it easier to see that this could be a thing. Yeah,
and also, so that first project that we spent that much time building was a graphic design app. It was essentially a Canva clone. And pretty much the whole time we were doing it, even though I mean it was a bad business for very many reasons, it wasn't, I don't even know that you could call it a business. I sometimes call it just a project. But the whole time we were doing that, we were very aware of the fact that that the most favoured media type on the internet was video, and that was a growing favour, and that people were consuming more and more video, and video is much more difficult to process and to deal with than images are.
Out of interest, who came up with the name Choppity?
I think it was you.
Yeah. Oh man, I still have the Google Doc on my phone. Basically, I just went in and I wrote basically I really like the concept always of small things coming together to create like complex behaviors, because there's like lots of really nice examples of that, like in nature and in simulations and stuff like that. And I had the same idea. That's what I wanted this to be, because it's like, you know, lots of little things kind of coming together, you know, or vice versa of that. And so I just like wrote down a list of probably like 50 to 100 words which were related at all. And then I think actually I created a script. So like, you know, those domain registering websites where you can buy a domain. I created a script where essentially I would take those words, like jumble them as well, and then test to see if they were even available, like the .com.
Oh, wow.
That would have been helpful.
But then it turns out that's just actually not useful at all. Like it's really hard to like do it in that process. And so honestly, it was just a case of like, I don't know, a few days of like trial and error to come up with like, you know, something that was brandable and short enough and available.
We were quite lucky because our friend came up with a name for us, so we didn't really have that.
Yeah, we were like,
it was
happy with that.
Yeah, it was like, that works really well.
But you know, that's the interesting thing, right? Is I personally believe that like brand names don't really matter that much. It's like, you know, Google means nothing to anybody, but it's just like what it's become. Same with like Adidas, Nike, any of these. It's like they could be called anything. You know?
I have a question for you guys. When you're like, do you have advice for anyone that might have an idea and is scared to turn that into a reality? Because I feel like when I talk to you both, like one thing that I really like is the confidence that you both like give off. But was there ever a point where you had like fears and like self-doubt in terms of like actually building this tool, and maybe fears about whether it would be successful, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I think especially in the early stages, things are very sort of chaotic and volatile and uncertain, and you spend a lot of time trying to sell something that you know isn't perfect, but you kind of need people to buy it so that they can use it, and so that they can kind of start giving you feedback and start using it. And you get a lot of no's, and I think it's just exposure. I think you just kind of have to get used to hearing no's. You have to get used to rejection. You have to get used to actually having something that you're not 100% bought into. Like it's totally fine. There are like shitty products that that make it, and if they make it, then your shitty products can also make it.
That's good advice.
Do you feel like having each other has helped throughout this process?
Yes.
Or the journey?
I mean, I would say from my side of things, so I started coding when I was about 13 and I was making video games. And my goal was, and to be honest still kind of is at some point I want to release like a proper game.
So cool.
But the interesting thing is with something like video game development, it's such a ridiculously hard thing for one person to do. And so what tends to happen is if you're working on something solo is you might be like really passionate about it. But then as soon as you hit a roadblock, that can be really, it can like just kill, literally like months of passion can be killed so quickly. But if you have a second person, at least what can happen is that your passion will like cyclically like offset each other.
So
like, you know, for example, at that point, maybe that's when I was like, oh, this is amazing, this is great. I just had a conversation with that person, they loved this. And then that either picks you up or it carries it through. And it just means you always have like somebody to like bounce things off of. I definitely would not be able to do anything like solo. I think it would just be,
Yeah, totally. And same, I think for me, it's what I said to my friend the other day is I feel like I'm doing something I love with someone I love, which makes me love the thing that I do more, and it also makes me love you more. And it's like, I don't know, it just feels, it's like that much more, it's just that much more, you know, it's, and I would say though that for a little while it was just the two of us. And while, yes, we were able to sort of carry ourselves through little moments, there were times where we were both feeling unmotivated, and that was really difficult. So in January we moved into beginning of January we moved into this founders collective, which is basically they're called Plugged. So I'm gonna plug them. and they're really great. They're a community of founders that have moved in together into an office in Shoreditch, and you're there working every day with people who are in a similar mindset, and we do accountability sessions, we do goal setting once a week, we do they have like workshops and stuff, and it means that if we're feeling crappy, then, which hasn't happened since we've moved in, to be fair, but I think one of those reasons is because of the fact that it's been so motivating to be in that space of other people who are working, and they've got so many ideas, and there's just so much energy, and it's that thing of sometimes hearing an outside perspective, even if it's not the right one, can get your own cogs whirring and can get you thinking differently, and it's so valuable. I think we're just powerful in numbers. Sorry, just one
No, that's so true. Alicia and I were like smiling our faces off when you were both talking, because it's like when you were speaking, I think we could both really relate to that, especially like working on the podcast together and starting and throughout it. Like we've had Alicia have her jaw surgery, me go through exams, and
that was tough.
there were so many times where it's like one person is doing a lot, the others like physically can't. But being able to do it together, know that we still have each other, has been amazing. That's why we're still here.
I know.
And I was gonna say that's why like I fundamentally believe, you know, when like in a business you have different like equity split, like who owns what percentage of the company. I think if at the start that's not 50-50 or 33-33, you know, whatever, that's just fundamentally bad. Like it's just a really bad place to start, because then it means that already I feel like you're arguing about who owns what of zero.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't account for the fact that, you know, some days one person will be doing everything and the other person won't be doing anything. And it's like, it's
I
just
do
the way it
think
goes.
it's slightly different though when one person might be bringing a lot to the table that means that they wouldn't be able to do anything, or that it gives them a leg up rather. Because there are some circumstances where, for example, like technically someone already has some proprietary tech, for example, that they bring over to someone who they co-found with, or someone already has a bunch of investors.
Interestingly, the counter argument to that you sometimes hear is that if it's somebody that's critical to the business, they should be a founder, and not necessarily that they get equal split. But if they're not critical, then they should be an employee as opposed to a co-founder. So you also hear that sometimes.
I also wanted to ask you guys a little bit off topic, but if you don't mind me asking how you met. because I feel like the way that you, I don't know, the way
Speak
that,
about each other.
yeah, the way you both speak about each other and the way you interact, it feels so healthy. Like I feel like I'm
Very.
a relationship advisor actually. So how did you guys meet?
Our first conversation ever was, we were at a formal dinner at our uni. It was like in Freshers Week, I think, actually, and we were sat opposite each other, or kind of like diagonally opposite each other, and we started talking about, well, I was talking to the people around me about, I'd just done an internship at a startup, and we were talking about, I don't know, something to do with blockchain or something to do with something entrepreneurial, and then Aaron, who was sitting across from me, kind of heard and started sort of challenging the things that I was saying, which actually I think hurt our relationship. Because at that point I was like, who is this guy? Who the fuck? Sorry. Who does he think he is? He's like, yeah. And then like a couple months later.
Wait, because by the way, my side of that was that I've always liked like debating, and I quite liked hearing, you know, somebody who was very knowledgeable about a topic, and you know, I think it was new to me also to be in a space where there were other people who were interested in the same sort of things as me, like this like tech stuff, and so to hear somebody else talking about it, I was like, oh, this is fun. So I was like, okay, we're having a great conversation. You know, we're doing like on the one hand, on the other hand, in conclusion. But Zara just kind of thought it was a hostile.
I literally thought you were like, I don't even know.
Yeah, like enemies to lovers.
Yeah, kind of actually, because then what happened was, later on, Aaron overheard me talking about polyamory, and he basically asked me if we could have a hot chocolate and like have a chat about it, and it was the first time I'd had a chat about it where it wasn't like, since having arrived to uni, it was the first time I had a chat about it that it wasn't like, oh yeah, and like, you know, what have you done, like, you know, like where have you been, like what kind of parties have you been to and stuff, and and it was a lot more collaborative, I guess. Like we were talking about, you know, very theoretically what can things look like, and what do things look like, and then pretty much from that day on I think we spent most every day together that we could, and then COVID happened and we spent a couple of weeks apart, but then when we came back together again it was and I think it's interesting what Aaron mentioned about that that first debate. I think was probably peak us not knowing how to communicate with one another. and that happened a couple more times in our relationship where we were having these kinds of conversations, and I felt like Aaron was just being hostile, or what was the word I used to use? Contrarian is the word that I used to use.
I was going to say contradictory.
No, not contradictory though, because it's not like he was contradicting himself. I guess it was like he was, it just sometimes felt like it was like being critical for the sake of being critical, but and Aaron didn't feel that way. Aaron would then express that that's not what he's doing. He's just looking to kind of explore things and stuff, and
just learn more.
And that massively influenced how the rest of our communication formed.
For sure.
And how did you then go from that point to founding a business together? What was that process like?
It was kind of like in tandem. I think for me, I've been attempting to start businesses since I was probably about 15 years old. So I've always been like working on stuff and like building little projects or side projects and things like that. And then I think, I mean, very early on we started like talking about that stuff and like ideating on these things. I was actually, I don't even know if we've spoken about this, but I think I was somewhat hesitant to start working on something together. One of the reasons why is because, you know, it's a new relationship. Like I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and I know that I invest fully into it. So if I'm going to start something, and you know, every single thing that I do, I think it's going to be the thing, right? Because that's I think that's how you have to operate on things.
You have that self-belief.
And so I was like, okay, well, am I really going to start, you know, do like a 50-50 split on something with somebody that I've just met that I don't really know that well, you know, and you know, because all I know is how I'm going to operate. I know I'm going to give it 100%.
Yeah.
I have no idea about this other person. But it just so happened, like, you know, I've worked in, like, you know when you do like a school group project and one person does all the work.
Oh, I hate those.
Yeah.
I always hated those.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan.
I was always that person.
Yeah.
Which, you know, has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
Cons in the short term, pros in the long term. But it just so happened that with Zara, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And we were able to work together really, really well. And so, yeah, I think, you know, just going for that. But yeah, pretty much like from, I don't know, maybe
It
like
was
3
very
months
early
in,
on. It
we
was
started
very
working on
early
something.
We started on a bunch of different things because I remember I was a virtual personal assistant at the time for someone, and you know he needed like websites done and stuff, and so I used to like kind of funnel that through to Aaron so that Aaron could get paid to do something, and then we started building websites together, and then we started ideating about a game. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
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 And we did like a lot of the mapping out of it. We didn't do that much of the building of it, but we did a lot of the kind of the storyline and like what was actually going to happen in it and stuff. And then I remember we were in France because we were visiting my mum, and Aaron was like on his phone on Instagram, and that's when he started talking about essentially what it was like. You wanted to build like a photo book builder. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember.
That's how Hugh started. So he was like, yeah, let's build this photo book builder. I was like, yeah, that sounds great, because you know there was sort of like a little bit of a trend at the time of people going back to analog, and you know people wanting to, you know, shooting in film and like liking having physical items. And so we were talking about, you know, can we basically from people's Instagrams create this kind of gifting thing where you could just put in a handle and then it would create automatically a photo book for that person, and then you would gift it to that person. And then you started building the editor, and then we were kind of having conversations about how much work was going into the editor. And then I think you said, well, so much work is going into the editor that this feels like it should be a product in and of itself. Again, bad business practice.
Yeah,
This
really
is
bad.
not how you should start a business like, at all. But that's how that happened. And then because then it just kind of naturally happens that you're constantly having these sort of like strategy conversations together. You're constantly ideating together. You're building together, and you start talking about. Also, the further into our relationship we got, the more into the future we would talk about what we wanted from our lives, and the more that would kind of shape, I guess.
That's beautiful. No.
You've both mentioned, obviously you both touched on that you've had a lot of technical experience. How did you, like, when did you know that you wanted to get into tech, and what was that process like? Because, I mean, you've mentioned that you was interested from a young age building games.
For me, my journey is very easy to remember. So my dad's an electrical engineer. So I always thought that I was going to go into, like, you know, electrical engineering and soldering stuff and that. But actually, it just wasn't what I had passion in. But I did really like Mario Kart. I absolutely loved Mario Kart. And I remember I was probably, around
Still
like...
does.
I bought a Nintendo DS like a few months ago. But yeah, so I remember like playing that game and being like, I have no idea how this works. Like I understood how TV worked, and I understood what frames were. Like, you know, you've got a lot of images in a row, and that, you know, when you play them back fast, it's a video. So I was like, okay, so is it that they can, like, you know, create every single possible combination of every single image that could exist and then play those depending on what inputs? And I was like, that makes no sense because it's going to be, you know, infinite. So then I Googled stuff, and then that's how I got into like, oh, there's a thing called coding and like video game development, and then just like that.
So it started from a curiosity for you.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
For me, I actually, it's a different technical. Like I wanted to do maths. I started studying maths, and I wanted to be, I think I was telling Praise about this the other day, where my mum had sent me, so I my friends as a teenager, most of them were sort of very left-wing, very loudmouth activists. I love them for it, like they're and really admire that. And a lot of them have gone into, you know, sort of charity work or into research or into non-high paying careers, and are kind of in a place where they're, what's the word? I guess their basic needs don't end up being met, but they're also really stuck on the causes that they want to help, and because of the fact that their basic needs aren't met, they're not really giving as much as they can to the causes that they're working on.
So true.
And on the other hand, excuse me, and on the other hand, I had my dad and kind of his entourage, who were all, sort of entrepreneurs and very, I guess, money and tech oriented, but weren't really doing that much by way of
like social impact.
And I knew that they had a very easy life in comparison to my friends who were doing good, and I was like, I don't know, there must be something in between, or there must be a way of getting the best of both worlds. And around that time, my mum sent me an article about this woman who had spent her 20s working as an investment banker, and I think she hit 30, quit her job, bought a flat, and then became like the CEO of this charity, and just started dedicating her life to, once her basic needs had been met, was able to dedicate her life to doing good. And so I basically read that article and was like, that's going to be me. So I'm going to become an investment banker. I'm 30, and then I'm just going to do good, like for the rest of my career. And then I just stopped liking studying maths. So I met Aaron at the beginning of when I was studying maths, and I just wasn't like, I don't know, my life was a little bit, I think, too well-rounded in order to be able to just dedicate myself to doing a degree in maths. And maths really requires you to like dedicate your life to it while you're studying it, and it also felt really far away from, like, I was like, okay, so I'm going to be learning all this stuff, I'm not going to be using any of this stuff in my career, I'm going to have to relearn what I'm going to do, so I might as well learn something practical. And that's when, at that point, I think if I hadn't met Aaron, I might have gone into something like engineering or economics. But I had met Aaron, and I saw that he was able to just build things straight away. And I dabbled in coding in code before. I knew how to code in Python at that point. So it wasn't that much of a stretch for me to start learning to code in JavaScript and HTML and like other languages that could potentially be complementary or more useful. And then so I switched over to computer science, and then throughout computer science we were building things, and then we started building Choppity, and I basically realized that I was learning more through building Choppity than I was through my degree. And up until that point, what had been motivating me the most had been learning, and it had felt like learning through academia. So through school, I was incredibly motivated to learn because that was where I was learning the most. And through like the sort of normal academic path, that felt like where I was going to be able to learn the most. But then suddenly there was a shift where that's not where I was learning the most. I was learning the most through running the company. And so the motivation for the degree just stopped. And so I quit.
I can relate to so many parts of what you said. Firstly, I think the point on social impact is actually really important, because when I went to university, I also had this, I've said this on every episode, I'm sorry guys, but I had this vision of being a politician and changing the world, because I was just really driven by having a social impact, and similar reasons to why we started YouTube as well, is just increasing representation in the space. But I feel like I became very disillusioned with it when I actually started to get experience in it, because I realised that there's only so much impact that you can actually have. And I think similar to how you read the article, my sort of logic for switching over to corporate was my scholarship donor at my university, because I saw the good that he was doing. He'd pledged millions of pounds in scholarships to our uni and to another uni in Canada and another uni in Africa as well. And it's wow, he would not have been able to have that impact had he not gone down the route of founding a business or going down corporate. So that's when, I ruled out investment banking quite quickly, but then I looked at consulting, and that's why I'm in consulting now. So very similar thought process, but I think it's good advice as well, because it shows that you can still be driven by these causes and want to do good and still do that through tech, founding a business, corporate. It doesn't have to be two exclusive things.
It's interesting because I feel like there's an emptiness to being motivated for success for the sake of success. And I think that we as people find purpose through doing good, and it gives me so much more purpose to think of my 20s as my profit years, so that then 30s onwards I don't have to work for profit anymore. It's so much more motivating to think of that than I don't think I would be able to find the same level of motivation to grow a business for the sake of it otherwise.
Why do you think that is the case for you? Like, why do you think you're motivated by those more social factors, whereas other people might not be? Because I know for me, for example, I think one big driver is like my background that I grew up in, and wanting to change things for young people that grow up disadvantaged and want better for their lives.
I think similar. I think not necessarily my background. I think I spent a lot of time like reading about things and having anxieties about things that I can't control or help. And it feels like there are a lot of problems that would be very easily solvable, that when you don't have power and influence, which unfortunately sometimes is just dictated by how much money you have or how much credibility you have, it just means that, I don't know, it's left in the hands of people who are selfish, you know, and it's left in the hands of people who are making decisions that are, you know, burning the planet, or meaning that people can't afford to eat, or, you know, whatever it is. It's just kind of, it's not going in a direction, or at least it's not moving quickly enough in order to have an impact. And and I think about that a lot when it comes to even like things like, I don't know if I was talking to you about this when it comes to taxes.
We were speaking about
that. Even that, like, I am of the belief, and I see there are a couple of countries that have high taxes and that do really well at distributing that in order to have a higher social impact. But in this country, your taxes go to the government and they spend it on like on defense, on like oil, on, they like spend it on privatizing the NHS, like on doing all these things where it's like, so even if you just have a job, pay your taxes, like even that isn't really like doing good here, you know. And so if there can be a world where, you know, you can actually choose where you allocate that to, which again, more likely to do if you can have a larger chunk of cash, put it into a fund and then actually do something with that than if you I don't know.
No, I agree. I also feel like I was having this conversation with someone else the other day about how with politics it's very unfortunate, because I feel like naturally it attracts people from privileged backgrounds because of what you were saying about your basic needs not being met. Because if, let's say I was born into a very wealthy family, I probably would not have, in fact I wouldn't have to consider those factors in terms of income, and then I could enter something like politics and potentially have an impact there. Whereas I think a lot of people from underprivileged backgrounds don't feel like they can access the public sector because they might need to earn more, so they might go down like a tech route or
it's interesting because actually we can only start a company because we're incredibly privileged. Like, we get to live in London rent free, like that's insane. Like, that's actually, no one has access to that I mean, you know, very few people do, and as a result it means that, you know, our expenses are much lower. And I was also talking to Praise the other day about universal basic income. Like, that's a topic that comes up for me quite a lot recently, because I feel like it would solve a lot of issues. I mean, if you can imagine that there's X% of the population has the potential to being incredibly impactful and to having, you know, to having a large impact and to doing a lot of good, but most of them can't afford to think outside of, I need to just pay my rent, I need to feed myself, I need to, whatever it is, survive, then it feels unfair. And also, I was literally just saying this to Aaron on the train, I feel like with the privilege that I have, it would be such a waste not to try and do something as big as possible to try and redistribute some of that privilege on the other end. Otherwise it's just, you know, you just kind of end up being a cog in the wheel. And
do you both have any ideas for how you might do that?
So I mean, it depends. It really depends on how much we can make in the next 10 years. UBI I find a really interesting topic of conversation. If there's some kind of a study that can be funded that can actually demonstrate that produces more economic output for a country, I think it would need to be done on a large enough scale. But UBI, I think, is a really interesting topic of conversation for me. There's other things also, like in like green tech, that I think could be quite interesting, but those aren't the kinds of topics that I would want to, or those aren't the kinds of problems that I would want to explore just yet, because the landscape is going to look so different in the next sort of 5 to 6 years. So whereas UBI is kind of it's a universal topic that I think as a concept hasn't really changed, and also in the past couple of years that not that much progress has been made on it. So yeah.
There was something else in your original answer as well that I picked up on, and I think it was when you said that you switched from maths to computer science, and then you felt like you was learning more through Choppity than you were learning at university. And I think it speaks to like a lot of the common themes that we get through our guest episodes is the idea that you should be flexible, because I feel like when we're young we have this like set belief in terms of what we want to do, but it's important to like be open-minded and to be, I mean you said this earlier, to like exit your comfort zone as well, and to be uncomfortable by leaving your comfort zone and trying new things, because otherwise you might never actually find where your passions truly lie as well. So I think that was great advice there.
Well, we had some fun questions for you both, wherein we've spoken about Choppity, but is there any app that you both use that you couldn't live without?
Oh,
That's a good one.
oh, there's a few for me for sure. Number one is just Trello. You know Trello?
Oh, I love it.
Trello's like it's a to-do list app.
Yeah, I love it.
And it's weird because like anybody who's ever like gone down the rabbit hole of like bullet journaling and diary, none of that works apart from like, for me, I just need a place where I can just dump everything and then know that at some point in the future I'll make sense of it.
I'm gonna
and like I just need that to like make space. It's like it's a second brain.
It's very fun actually. I like moving things across. I'm like,
I'm gonna try it out.
Zara, do you have one?
There's a couple that I use regularly at the moment. I think Notion is probably one of the biggest.
We love Notion as well.
Yeah.
I'm using it so much at the minute for like everything, just every organizational thing I need to do.
What's yours, Praise? I'm interested.
The Apple Notes app, but it's because
of course,
I write I think I have a lot. There's often I'm overthinking a lot, and there's a lot in my brain. So if I'm ever on the go, I'll just put it in my notes app, and I'll make use of it later. But at least it's down there and out. But also we started using it more. Like we make collaborative notes when we're working on something, so that
when it's easier because you're always on your phone. As well.
That's been really good.
Mine is it's not really an app, but there is an app of it, so technically it's ChatGPT. Like I can't live without it. It's actually very bad. What do you guys think about that?
I don't even Google things anymore.
ChatGPT. Literally.
I don't know. See, I was really anti at the start. I was super anti because I was seeing Zara using ChatGPT, right? And it's like, I assume it's very much so how people thought about Google when it came around, where I was like, if you keep using this, you're just going to stop thinking. And that was literally how I felt about it. And to be honest, I do think that there's an element of that. I absolutely, no, I do think that there's an, like, okay, it's like, if you just ask somebody to write a haiku, nowadays, it's so much harder than if you just be like, write a haiku about this, And I feel like,
it always makes haiku rhymes. Like that's a great rhyme, but it's actually a really bad example because it's like a haiku is specifically not supposed to rhyme, and haiku always make a haiku rhyme.
But see, like you have enough experience in that. I'm just saying, you've clearly done it.
I feel like I get the most use out of chat when I have ideas.
You give it a nickname.
Well, first thing we're close. Is when I already have ideas and I put it in there to refine my ideas. But I feel like if you ask it to give you ideas, it's too basic. So like, let's say there's probably a lot of students listening, or I would hope so. If you use ChatGPT for university, do not just put in your essay question and say, write my essay for me, because it will be really basic and generic and it will produce the same thing for everyone. Whereas I feel like if I have loads of ideas, I'll like put it in there and I'll be like, challenge my thinking on this, like expand my thinking here. And then, that's how I use it.
It's absurd to me. But I'm in the middle of trying to embrace it, but also... it's
dangerous
of the opinion that to a certain point or to a certain degree, it can limit people's abilities to start thinking for themselves.
That's the thing that I find interesting, because so there's a lot of people who were radically against books when they came out as
like
technology.
reading.
Yeah, like reading, because similar reasons, like they thought it would stop people from like thinking, or it would make people lose like their memory and stuff, because suddenly they can like write things down and like have things in a book and stuff. And there was like a lot of criticism around it, and like now it's like seen as super valuable, and it's not like, I mean, I'm sure we remember less, but we have more to remember, firstly. So being able to write things down is incredibly valuable, but you can do more, you can do different things. And I feel like we can't think of any of these tools as being inherently good or bad. It's what you end up doing with them and what they end up allowing you to do. Like, it's the same as like, I don't know, has a knife stopped us from being able to, I don't know, tear food with our hands? Or like, what were we doing before? Like, we just do different things now. And it means that for me, I find that it frees up my time to think bigger picture and to think more about strategy and less about like, oh, should I put this word there or this word there? And,
but do you also think it depends at what point in life you're
I
at?
think so.
Because I think for my cousins, no offense to you, but like when I feel like when I was in university, I'm very grateful ChatGPT only started after my university years, because if not, that degree would be me and the app walking across the stage.
I so agree. No, I have to say.
That's funny.
In literal real life, those are the tools that you'll have access to.
Exactly.
So you should.
I know, but I think it's
education
different.
should be adapted.
No,
to
I totally agree. Like, I literally said the exact same thing as you maybe like 2 weeks ago, and we had this exact conversation. Because basically the way that I see it is, like, for example, people who are now learning to code, it's interesting because they now have access to ChatGPT, which really accelerates that. But what it does mean is that if you don't learn things from fundamentals, it means that you're like skipping over a whole thing, in my opinion.
As soon as you have a question, you can just ask chat.
Yeah, but then
like, it will
but the
literally teach
issue,
you the fundamentals.
the issue, well, maybe, but you don't necessarily know what fundamentals to learn, because.
But I think it changes, because I think like fundamentals is so subjective. Like, arguably, like, what are the fundamentals of coding? Like, are the fundamentals learning how to actually build a computer? Or are the fundamentals learning about, like, how electricity works?
Yeah, I mean, that's levels of abstraction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it just changes the level of abstraction. It literally just changes the level
Honestly,
of
I
abstraction.
disagree. I disagree. And the main reason why is because we're not yet at the stage where we're like, okay, like, I don't see code at all. If we were at the stage where I don't see code at all, then I would agree. Because
We're at the
that's...
stage where you don't see assembly at all.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm saying, like, right now you've got like prompting, natural language, and that becomes code. But I still need to see the code, and I need to be able to edit the code.
Yeah.
If we moved up one level of abstraction where the code doesn't even matter anymore, I would agree. But we're not there yet. And so as a result, it means that if the LLM or whatever makes some makes an error, I need to have the fundamentals in order to even know that it's made an error, or to even be able to correct it. And that's where I think, that's the difference between, somebody who's starting to learn how to code. Like, two people could write the exact same code, but using an LLM who's like a junior just starting out, and one who's like a senior developer who's been like coding for ages. And they will, maybe on the surface level, 95% of the time they'll work. But the 5% of the time, this one's going to break for some reason. But you won't know why.
But you won't know why, but that is where the learning opportunity is. And I feel like that's actually, it ends up being more useful because you actually, like, for me, one of the reasons that uni was so not motivating towards the end was because it was like learning stuff for the sake of learning stuff. I was learning stuff that I was like, I don't think I'm going to use this. I don't think I need it. I'm not
I have to disagree.
But that is what literally happened. And the reason that I was learning so quickly with Choppity was because there was a problem in front of me, and I was learning through trying to solve problems. And I do feel like the same can happen even in that circumstance. Like, I know what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to fix this. Let me find out what this is. Now I have to learn individually these components. But that's all I have to learn, And I might go into a certain level of depth with it, but at least it like frames very neatly where I need to start exploring and what it is that I need to learn.
I that is usually my perspective. But I think there's one caveat to that, which is that if you only ever focus on the specific problem that you're doing now, it's like I was saying with that like prepared mind. If you understand more things outside of the domain of what you're doing right now, those things can often impact the thing that you're doing now. and will allow you to do things in a different way. But if you never learn something for the sake of learning it, it's why like I watch like YouTube videos about like random stuff all the time. You know, stuff which is like interesting because it has nothing to do with my work, but it has very often informed the things I do in my day-to-day work, which I would never come to that conclusion if I just went straight problem solution. So I don't know.
Do you guys think there's still a value in getting a degree and going to university from the perspective of if you're going to start a business? Like, do you think maybe it gave more credibility or no?
I think it depends. So we have friends at the minute who are they're building software in the energy sector, and I think one of them has, or they might both have masters. One of them has an undergraduate and the other one has a master's, and they're really struggling at the minute because of the fact that they're competing against either founders who have lots of experience and are like have worked in industry for years and years, or founders who have like PhDs and like postdocs and stuff. And for them, that's a particularly challenging space because that's how you get grant funding. That's how you fundraise, and they don't really have any of the. Well, they have few of the things that that ordinarily grants or whoever like what's the word? Not administers. Whoever distributes, gives grants. And investors like to see. So for them, arguably, it might have been more useful for them to stick with a degree for a little bit longer. But for us, I mean, I don't regret having quit my degree. I didn't need it. We kind of have discussion with Aaron about whether or not. I mean, I think the path that we went on was probably the right path. Yeah. But I think that if I was talking to someone about, them wanting to start a company, I probably wouldn't recommend them go to uni. I'd probably recommend they just try stuff. And if at some point they want to go back to uni, then they can always do that. But that's, at least it will be like a conscious decision of, this is a specific thing that I want to learn, rather than I'm going to uni because that's just the default and that's what everyone does.
Fair enough.
What do you think about that?
That was a pretty hard right there. That was a good one. I would say it's difficult because when you're in the situation, because we both had the opportunity to go to university, not everybody has that opportunity. I think when you have that opportunity, then it's easy to say, you don't need it, or it's not necessary. Honestly, I think it's a hard thing. It depends on who you are as well. Like for example, I really wanted to go to Cambridge. I went to Cambridge.
Join the club.
I did the whole interview process and then got rejected. Yeah. So I'm still salty about that.
Same.
But the interesting thing is like, I think university, it does do something for you.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it does have some value to it. Like I was saying before with like the academic papers, I think if I went on like my own self-directed path, I probably would have never gone down the academic paper route because I just would have assumed, it's like learned helplessness, I would have just assumed that I couldn't do it, so I didn't. That's not to say that I wouldn't have been able to do it. I just don't really think I would have done it. Whereas now it opens up like a lot of doors and like the things that I can do. So I think one of the most valuable things, and it's the same with like, I didn't go to private school, I went to state school. But I imagine that one of the big values of state school is the, almost like the reassurance. Yeah. You don't have to double guess yourself. You'll never, think that way if you've done it. Yeah. And it's the same with private schools. Like you just become entitled in a certain way. Like people who have gone through university are entitled in their thinking. They know that they can do this. They know that they can get that job because they've gone through university. That's not to say that you couldn't have done it otherwise.
And there's also not to say that they actually can.
Exactly. But that's the interesting thing is the entitled thing. Like I think being entitled is so important. Yeah. I think it's so important, and it's not something that people like us do.
No, that's we were talking about this earlier as well. Like just the power of the tongue and self-confidence is so real.
Well, it has been such a pleasure having you both with us today. And with every episode, we always ask our guests that what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
See, I knew this was coming.
No, I knew this was coming and I still wasn't prepared for it. So
how did you know?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Classic.
Do you want to go for it? Do you want some
I'm
time
still
to think?
mulling. Do you have?
Okay. I'm gonna go for the entitled thing. Actually, I think it's just so important to learn how to be entitled. It's something that, you know, I've been like a people pleaser my entire life, and I think that's also a factor because of how I was raised. I like to make myself small. You know, I don't really want attention. Having said that, I was a class clown, right? But like in certain situations, like I didn't really, yeah. And I think when I see, like, it frustrates me, like the Cambridge thing, for example, frustrates me because I do truly believe that had I been more entitled and had more confidence and self-belief, then I would have like performed better in like the, you know, entry exam and, you know, things like that.
The interview,
But like I didn't have that, and I just assumed, like, when I went to Cambridge, I was like, I am lucky to be here. Whereas other people that I spoke to, they're like, yeah, of course I'm here.
Yeah.
Of course, like, yeah, you know, and it's like that like change in mindset is like, it's something that's really hard to do. But if you can start thinking like that, and you know, it's difficult. Like,
How did you change that mindset?
well, so I was gonna say, so my other thing that I've wanted to learn how to do is how to be more disagreeable, which basically means, like, you know, how to be less of a people pleaser. And the way that I did that was just by actively doing it. And it sounds really weird, but, you know, I would have like, you know, there were situations where you'd be on the tube and something would happen, and you will actively step into that and become confrontational on purpose because it's not something that I do. So you kind of have to, like,
not just picking a fight.
oh yeah, no, not at all.
Someone being mean to this person.
Yeah, exactly. Like somebody was being mean, and like instead of like being a bystander, like, you know, and it's not something that necessarily I would have normally done, but like choosing to do that. And I think it's the same with being entitled. It's like, you know, you go to like a networking event, and instead of like, you know, the speaker has finished talking, and then, you know, the three people go to them. You're the first one there. You're asking the questions. You're taking up, you know, all the time, and it's uncomfortable to do because it feels rude, and it is rude, probably. But it doesn't matter because you're learning how to do it, and it's just part of the process.
True. It's funny. I used to say that to people all the time. I used to say like just be more entitled, because if you're not, someone else will be, and then they'll get what you want. And you need to just be like, have conviction that you're there. Like, you don't need to, I mean, it's kind of like a manifest thing almost, you know, like actually just so true. Because the other day, I can't remember what you were saying, but we were talking about like what the next kind of 5 years looks like, and I felt like Aaron was talking in very hypotheticals, and I was like, we're not talking in hypotheticals, like this is happening, this is what we're doing, like our 20s are our profit years, like this is literally what we're doing. And I would totally agree with that. But actually, what I would probably say to my younger self is to be adaptable. Like, I feel like it's very easy to be like dead set on a specific, whatever it is, career path, life journey, event, or whatever it is, and things change, and it's okay that they change. And I think that can be really difficult to, like, what's the word? I think it can be difficult to just take that and accept that when you've had your heart set on something, or when when you've really believed that something was going to go a certain way. But I guess simultaneously be entitled and be prepared for something not to happen, or not prepared, but accept that it's okay that it doesn't.
100%. Oh, I love that. I wish we had more time. I'm annoyed. That was incredible.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us on this episode. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I know Alicia has. She's grinning like a Cheshire cat. And hopefully, you know, have you back again in the future. But for now, thank you guys for listening to another episode of To My Younger Self. It's been your girl Praise,
and it's been Alicia
and
Zara
and Aaron.
And we will see you next week with another episode. Goodbye.
Bye.